Okay, so here we are continuing with the CWB series. This is Bloody Road South. This is going to cover the wilderness, the opening stages of the campaign, the Battle of the Wilderness itself in 1864, May, before things get too entrenched in the wilderness. Now, oh boy, like most things, I don't know enough about this to really be giving too much historical commentary. I've skimmed through the historical discussion, but let's take a look at some of the special rules here. First of all, there's the wilderness itself. All the forest hexes in this game are going to be considered wilderness. There's a whole sort of summary of this stuff, the wilderness, the unfinished railroad, etc. But it's all covered in the rules, so it's not too bad that it's over there. They're just giving a summary for an extra place to put some information. The wilderness itself because it's so tough is going to have a special movement rules. So its movement point allowance is not too different from forests, with one proviso. The Union units, the infantry, pay 3 movement points to move through the wilderness, whereas the Confederates only pay 2. Everything else, 6 for artillery, wagon trains can't enter, leaders, 2 movement points a hex, and formation costs are going to cost double the normal. But there's more. I'm going to ignore this optional rule. This is to make life easier on the Confederates, which I probably need because I'm no Robert E. Lee, but I'm no Grant either. But Grant didn't have his finest hour here, although he showed the tenacity that would win the war. Whenever a Union unit enters the wilderness, it becomes shaken. This is not cumulative. If it's already shaken, it stays shaken. If it's bloodlusted, it's not affected. It's got its own terrain costs. It's got the possibility of an accidental flank fire. Whenever units in the wilderness are fighting each other, if it's a shaken or disorganized unit being fired upon, and the fire table roll is a 2 or a 10, it's treated as if it's a flank fire in addition to any other applicable modifiers. If you remember, I don't have the charts right here. I'm going to have to dig out the later edition rules and charts. Bloody Road South never got republished. This is one of the early ones, number 5. Oh shit, there goes my camera. Sorry about that. Number 5 here, and it's not as, this is version 2 of the rules, so it's pretty close to what I'm used to begin with. Last time, I can see I screwed this positioning up. We played Baron Victory, which is one of the earlier rule sets, and that one significantly different. Okay, but this is still 2.0, so it's going to have the special command rules that I had such high hopes for, but wasn't that impressed with in Baron Victory. And I won't be here either. I've looked them over. Anyway, mainly that's column shifts. I believe it's 2 or 3 column shifts in your favor when you're firing on somebody in the flank. And if you recall, woods don't give you any defensive benefit in this system. You can't recover stragglers in wilderness. That's both sides. Units forced to retreat in the wilderness must go along a road, railway, or trail if they're available. A bunch of counter clippings. These are the old style counters. They're really beautiful, although they some of them are less readable than you'd want. If a unit enters the wilderness at night, it's automatically disorganized instead of the shaken that the Union faces. And then it goes into, hey, that sucks, doesn't it? Shaken units in the wilderness have fire points halved, and disorganized units have them quartered. That's an optional. Again, I don't think I'm going to play with that. That's these are suggested as, both of the optionals here are suggested as, hey, if you want to make life a lot easier on the Confederates. Okay, there's an unfinished railroad running across here. Neither side knew about it at the beginning of the battle, and it can't be used as a trail unless it's discovered. Now, to discover it, you have to, this is not covered in the rules. You have to look here. The Union has to move north along the Brock Road through 4006. That may be incorrect. It's basically, yeah, it's going to be this 3906 instead. The hex that actually crosses it. And Confederates have to be on the plank road east of Parker's store. You know, Parker's store is back here, basically. And just about everything is east of that. So we're going to get chances right from the beginning of the game. You roll 2 dice for each side as follows. The Union on a 2, they discover it. Confederates on a 2 through 4, they discover it. Once it's discovered, it becomes a trail for that player for the rest of the game. The other side still has to discover it, however. I'll hit that later. Confederates have some capability to move off map over through this area here. The Rapidan River. Way up here. If you want to cross it, you've got to use the ford, but there's no conceivable reason anybody would want to go there. There's some map errata, not a big deal. Naming, a little bit of color strangeness, like here, where I believe map A is the correct part. That's the northern map. Oh, la la la. Okay, we're not going to deal with artillery ammo in this game because there's tons of ammo around and not a lot of opportunity to fire. Oh, both sides can reassign brigades from one division to another, and some of them start out as the Union ones, at least, maybe some of the Confederates, already reassigned at the beginning of the battle, and I'm going to have to note those down when I do my orders or whatnot, because there's units mixed up all everywhere. Basically, a single division can either have one of its brigades detached and attached to another division, or have one attached to it. It can't be in both states. It's got to be in one or the other. This is going to require an order. Wrecked brigades can't be reassigned. Wrecked divisions cannot engage in any kind of reassignment. And things go back when they do so. If it's only got 2 brigades, it can't detach. The wrecked units affect their original unit in terms of the loss chart for wrecked larger commands. Brigades with a B morale or better, which are not routed, can be given brigade goals, just like the divisional goals are given. Breastworks. Okay. I haven't decided yet. I think I'm going to play with the full scenario breastworks because I have a bunch of breastwork counters I can pull out and use. There's a shortcut part in this game, which is basically if you have unlimbered artillery, you're considered to have breastworks. Well, I don't think that that's going to capture the feeling as well of defensive positions that were held for a little while. Okay, special rules for the Confederates. The 9th Corps, which is not on the board yet, I think, for the most part, although there may be, that's 6th Corps. I'm thinking there may be some of it kicking around somewhere, but maybe, I don't think so. The 9th Corps, which is Burnside's, isn't on the board yet, but they're not part of the Army of the Potomac. And that affects the command situation. So you've got three Union high-ranking generals. You have Grant, Meade, and Burnside. And they each have their own psychological profile. Grant's going to be your overall commander, and he can write orders to Burnside, Meade, or any Army of the Potomac Corps or division commander. There's a correction elsewhere. Grant can send orders to Meade, who then, using his own command points, can issue the orders to the Army of the Potomac Corps commanders. I don't know why you'd want to do that unless it was some kind of more general order going to Meade that he could break into pieces. Meade can't issue orders to Burnside. If Grant is stacked with Meade, his orders are accepted instantly on the turn that they're given. On the next turn, Meade can recopy and reissue the orders. Again, I'm not sure why Meade would ever do this. Meade can only issue orders on his own if both Grant and Burnside are casualties. Wow. Orders can go directly from Grant to the Army of the Potomac. If he does so, yeah, there's a column shift against him, so that's the reason you wouldn't want Grant to issue orders directly. Burnside. If Meade becomes a casualty, Burnside takes over as commander of the Army of the Potomac. Unlike Meade, he has to take his orders from Grant in the normal manner, and Grant can no longer issue orders directly to the Corps. During the Wilderness Campaign, the Army of the Potomac has these oversized corps, so all Union divisions have to check attack stoppage separately. You use the standard corps attack stoppage, with each brigade counting as losses against it instead of each division, which I think is going to make it easier to really generate a more ragged Union offensive. Union Corps don't have to check for a stoppage themselves. And let's see. The following shifts are applied to attack stoppage made by divisions within the listed commands. So 5th, 6th, and 9th Corps takes a shift to the right. There's no Union anti-initiatives. Only Hancock can use initiative to give himself attack orders. Other commanders can give simple orders, except for Burnside, who can only use initiative to try to stop being as slow as he is by special rules. Only a limited number of divisional commanders, Gibbon, Barlow, Griffin, Wadsworth, Wright, and Getty, are going to be allowed to take divisional initiative. And those may be the ones corresponding with the Corps that can give themselves orders. Okay. Hancock. Hancock is over here, and he's in a wagon. Ooh, 3D House of War. For SCTV fans out there. He's going to move in his ambulance as if he's a limbered artillery unit. He's the best commander the Army of the Potomac has at this time and was trusted and relied on. For this reason, he can be given up to 3 additional divisions detached from original corps by orders from Grant or Meade at any one time. If Hancock becomes a casualty, this bonus will be lost, and the Union player has to decide which additional division he wants to stay with the 2nd Corps, because remember, we can reassign brigades, but the base rules allow you to reassign divisions. Hey, how about Burnside? I wish I had more table space here. Okay. Burnside's corps more or less stayed out of the fighting. Because of this, and because of Burnside's special status of just being Burnside's, Burnside and the 9th Corps must keep track of their status, their army status, separately from everyone else. Lee can make panic demands of Burnside directly. The Ninth Corps cannot move further south along the Germana Plank Road than Spotswood's Clearing. Okay, so here's the Plank Road. I'm guessing Spotswood's Clearing is this big area with the wilderness here. I'm probably covering something important there. Until one of these conditions happens. If the Confederates move within 2 hexes of a Ninth Corps unit, at 10 p.m. on the 5th of May, we start on the 5th of May. This battle only went 2 days, but there's a 3rd day option on it, and like in Thunder at the Crossroads, if I feel like exercising it, I may. And also, Burnside can make checks for initiative. And if he ever succeeds with his big 0 rating, I think he needs a 12, he's released and can then operate normally. Burnside can't use initiative for anything else. I don't know why you'd want to. Grant can give orders to Burnside, but they're never in-person verbal, even if they're stacked together. Burnside insists that he has everything in triplicate. All orders which Burnside is attempting to receive a column shift to the left. The Ninth Corps has a provisional brigade which can be attached to any Ninth Corps division. This is reassigned during the command phase in which Burnside's stacked with it, and he gets to freely do that when he's stacked with it. This isn't going to affect wrecking. There's a lot of special singular units that get attached like this. They get wrecked on their own. They don't affect the wrecked status of whatever unit they're added to. The 4th Division of the Ninth Corps is not available. This is part of Ferraro's troops, and they won't be in the game. But they have, if they get engaged, if you play with that option, they have really lousy morale because they're very green troops, but they have a bonus for straggling and straggler recovery, I think. Certainly for straggling. Yeah, all straggler functions. They count as A units. Okay, 2 more units, the Engineering Regiment and Kitching's Heavy Artillery, are basically units that Grant has turned into infantry, and he can attach them to divisions at will. Similar to the 9th Division, although I believe these guys require orders. The Army of Potomac Reserve. Here's an optional rule I'm going to play with. The Army of the Potomac. Orders from Grant or Meade. He can release up to 3 divisions from the Army of the Potomac to form a special reserve. These will use the Potomac headquarters as their corps headquarters. But that corps headquarters, well, once that happens, the Army of the Potomac has to receive orders to move. I think the 3rd edition rules require that anyway. And if it has divisions assigned, it can't move without orders. It can never be given complex orders. It just acts as sort of a defensive and maneuvering headquarters. But those units can be reassigned on individual divisional goals from that command. Again, I'm not sure why you would do this except to just keep them nearby. The Army of the Potomac supply train is present up here. Now I'm going to be doing a quick swap because I'm running out of video. There are 2 minor variants. One is Ferraro joins the fight. His 4th Division of the 9th Corps with black regiments would be added into the game on May 6th. That costs a couple of victory points and would be kept secret. And then there's another one where Burnside and his 9th Corps just isn't present. They've been used for something else. If this is done, this is announced to the Confederate before the game begins, but it gives the Union 5 victory points for that. And it's a Union pick to do that. Hold on. Yeah, this one's not as charged as I'd hoped. If you've been watching any of my more recent games, I've started swapping batteries between this and my old camera that didn't work a long time ago. I'm going to have to do this if I switch to the new camera over, because it too cannot operate on a cord any longer. Okay, what about the Confederates? So they have a few special rules too. No anti-initiatives. Let's see, anything special here? Okay, so if a corps commander gets wounded or killed, Lee can replace that corps commander himself, and he becomes the corps commander. He still has to roll for orders as both the sender and receiver, but it gives him in-person verbal without a problem, and do everything else like he's a corps commander. And this is because he basically took over Longstreet's corps. The Confederates have the ability to move between A101, I think that's this hex now, yeah, and B121, which will be down here. And that takes 3 turns for infantry and column, 4 turns for wagons, 2 turns for leaders and orders. It's just another way of getting some movement between here, because the Union largely controls this territory, but the Confederate controls a little bit off map. The Confederate reinforcements arriving on May 6th could have entered a number of different locations. The Confederate player must determine where they are to enter by 11 p.m. May 5th. These locations will be written on a scrap of paper, and that'll be shown when they come in. Longstreet and Anderson's orders can be changed anytime up to 11 p.m. May 5th. And they list where these guys can come in. I'm not going to worry too much about that. The 1st North Carolina Cavalry is, I believe, this unit way up here. Oh shit, I'm almost out of power on this one too. That regiment basically prevented the Union advance up this little Culpeper Road here. It exerts a zone of control into its adjacent hexes. Union units must stop if they enter that. They're not allowed to conduct close combat with the 1st North Carolina. If at the beginning of a Confederate player turn, one or more Union units is next to the 1st North Carolina, roll 2 dice on the 1st North Carolina withdrawal table. Which is over here. And that's how many hexes it has to retreat. If it retreats all the way back to the Orange Turnpike, or if a regular Confederate unit catches up with it, it's removed from the game. This is only a regiment. And it's got special retreat rules where it can just retreat along the road no matter what, through Union units, whatever. If it ends up stacked with a Union unit, it pushes the Union unit back east. So it's tremendously effective. Hey, it's Task Force Smith. Not quite. It's more effective. Okay, Confederate options that are available. Pickett joins Longstreet's division, or corps. Pickett was expected to be here by the Union, not by the Confederates, obviously, and could easily have made it up here, but he was kind of busy against Butler. There's another option which I may play with, which is Longstreet moves further east. By 11 p.m. May 5th, Longstreet has to decide if he's going to move to a different entry hex, B2901, which is, let's see, it's going to be down here. It's going to be over here. I don't know where he's supposed to come in. Probably listed over here in the variable. Longstreet A110, A101. He's supposed to come in here. He could instead come in down there at some delay. It also gives the Union victory points if he does that, though. 4 victory points. And it's a completely hidden option, which means the Union doesn't necessarily know where Longstreet's going to come. They strongly suggest playing with the threat of that option, because otherwise the Union may be able to position his forces in reaction to Longstreet coming in here too easily. Anderson moves with Hill. Anderson's 3rd Corps was left behind to guard the fords. This is another troop addition. Gives 2 victory points. I probably will not play with either the Pickett. I will not play with either the Pickett or Anderson ones. Okay, victory conditions. So this is kind of clever. In the game, they basically is dual track victory. There's a tactical victory, which is going to be determined largely from destroying enemy brigades, divisions, leaders, and strength point losses and gun losses. If you end up with a ratio of at least 1.5 or greater, well, greater than 1.5 times your opponent, you get a win tactically. If it's between 1.5 and 3, the higher rated side earns a minor tactical. If it's a 3 times or more, the higher rated side earns a major tactical. But then there's the strategic victory conditions, which are determined by locations, and I'm going to probably need to pay some attention to these. Brock's Crossing, I don't know where that is. Parker's Store, which is back here, is worth 4 for the Union to take. The Wilderness Tavern is worth 3 for the Union, for the Confederates to take. Tap Clearing. When you're taking clearings, you have to have the majority of the hexes of that clearing. Spotswood Clearing is big for the Confederates. A1210. That'll be down here. If the Confederates can hold that, well, the Union wants that actually. The Confederates want it too. Chunin Clearing, which is going to be up here. Trig, B3710. Oh, it's going to be way back down here. It's a house. That's worth a lot to the Confederates. Entry Hex F, which I believe is not that. F is down here. That is worth a lot to the Confederates. The Wilderness Church, B5125. That's got to be up here. It's, I'm sure worth a ton because that's the Union supply line there. And then what you do is you determine, okay, so beyond that, you also get points for Wrecked Corps. Corps commanders or higher who have casualties, and then for every 5 tactical victory points you get some points, and then you determine a differential to see who wins the strategic battle. I haven't checked the rules yet on the orders, and I haven't written them all up yet, so I'll do that probably tomorrow, and that's when we'll get started. Oh, here we are, Bloody Road South, and I've gotten a little further along in setting up. One thing to note, with all this wilderness rules, the special rail cut and everything, this and the terrain situation, this probably is not a good first game for the CWB series. I don't know if it's a terrible one. Some people say it's got the most special rules. I'm not sure. I think Embrace an Angry Wind has more, and I think 3 Battles of Manassas over here. Sorry about the light if that blinded you. At least the first battle, and maybe both the historical, really tinker with the main game system, screwing with the command rules, etc., in a way that this game doesn't really do. This game doesn't screw with that. But this one's a tough one to deal with, not just because of some of the special rules, which there are a decent number, but I don't think it's that terrible. But also the setup is somewhat less organized. The units are less organized, especially the Union, from what you're used to seeing in a CWB game. And then here's one more thing. The Union's got some orders, and you need the errata because some of the orders are missing, at least for some of the scenarios. copy of it that was included in the rules. I've got my own copy, but I don't think it got updated after that version. But the Confederates have no orders written. So you have to kind of know the system to know how to write a decent set of orders. And even then, for me, I kind of want the historical orders to be down. I want to understand what the plan was. And I usually want to play that out. And one of the ways that I learn about a historical situation through the game is through that. And it's one of the things I really love about CWB is it gives me the orders. It gives me an idea of what the commanders were trying to do here. Here, well, now I have to kind of try to assess the victory conditions, which also require the errata. There's one slight change. In order to determine, hey, what am I really trying to do here? You know, what terrain am I trying to hold, and can I? My understanding is that Lee took a very aggressive stance early in the battle. But the battle actually started a couple hours ago. First engagement was back then, but the Union didn't press it at all. So rather than write a bunch of special rules to keep the Union from just rollering the Confederate forces they were initially faced with, like with the North Carolina Cav, it's assumed that there was a significant delay put into place against them. But yeah, I'm gonna have to try to figure out what my orders are, and it's tough because the command is also it's not just a matter that like there's some disorganization in the Union command. The battlefield is kind of weird. You got Union forces hitting over here, Union forces hitting over here. Okay, that's starting to look like a line, right? Yeah, except it actually comes down to here and then over here. I don't feel like I have a consolidated force on either side. I feel like I have little patches of fighting, and that is indicative of the battle itself. That's what I expect to have happen, because it's almost impossible to fight in the wilderness. So the fighting is going to happen either on the roads or near them, or in the clearings, like up here near Chewing House, which is one that they say both sides kind of ignored. 3-5 has orders to withdraw from there early in the battle to rejoin its command. Strangely enough, those orders are given in a different scenario where map A isn't in existence, so it says exit the map, and that caused me some confusion. Alright, I'll try to write some orders for the Confederates, but right now I am not even ready to start. Delay the having to think aspect. There's a couple more things I want to go over. The personalities of the leaders. So this is kind of interesting. The Union has 3 leaders, each of whom has their own army panic rolls. Only Grant has the right to make panic demands, and he gets 2 a day on Lee. Lee also gets 2 panic demands a day, but he can give them to any of the 3 leaders. Okay, so for Grant's panic, he starts with an army status of 4. Rating, I don't think matters much. And depending on the number of wrecked divisions, remember, you can call it if the status is 1 or 2. Well, you can call it at any time. You can call it if you think the enemy is doing poorly. And if they end up with status 1 or 2, they end up, and if you're not familiar with this, go look at Baron Victory for my explanation of this role, because it's in very few of the old, well, it's in the old CWB games, and I have very few of them. Embrace an Angry Wind does not have it, although it has the rules for it. So, if Grant has been kind of losing the battle and thinks he has, he's going to have made some status check rolls and presumably perhaps gotten his army status, his view of how the battle's going, to reduce. Now, if he ends up rolling a successful panic, then orders are issued to all Union troops to withdraw off the east edge along trails, roads, or pikes. These orders are automatically accepted. So he leaves the battle, which probably means a Confederate victory, except that he gets 1 strategic victory point for each unwrecked division, which exits via Brock Road. Where's Brock? I don't know which one's Brock. I think this is the Plank Road. This is Brock Crossing. I've got to say it's got to be this, whether that's Brock Road or not. That's the only thing I can think of. It's got to be the Plank Road, because that's going where he most wants the troops to go. Okay. So Meade has he has exactly the same chart. And his panic is, if he panics, then orders from Grant to Meade must go through the same acceptance process as all others, even if the two are stacked together. I.e., Grant has to give Meade orders, just like if Meade's dead, he has to give orders to the replacement. Actually, the replacement will be Burnside in that case. And then those orders have to be rewritten and transmitted over, and there's going to be more delay on the Union Army if Meade's not around. So if Meade panics, he stops working as closely with and effectively with Grant. Well, given that they have the same numbers, that sounds shitty, right? Yeah, but the difference is that he has a starting army status of 3, Grant has a starting army status of 4. So there may be a better chance of screwing with Meade. And also, I don't know, you get those special strategic victory conditions if Grant leaves the battle. So, you know. Finally, there's Burnside, who, of course, he has a starting army status of 3. He's fairly confident here. But his ratings are based on, first of all, the 9th Corps alone. I think Grant may be based on everything and Meade based just on Potomac. That would make sense. Or maybe both are based on everything. Burnside has, I think, a slightly more painful table. And if he fails, the 9th Corps gets an additional column shift left on the acceptance table, and it cannot be given any attack orders. That's pretty big. So calls on Burnside, especially if you picked on him a little bit, might be good. But of course, if he's got a significant number of wrecked divisions, chances are that he's not really capable of mounting an attack anyway. So, probably less valuable. What about Lee? Well, Lee starts with a view of the army at 4. He's got a pretty good chart here. It's hard to tell because they're balanced for the forces, so I can't really judge how powerful that is. But if Lee ends up panicking, he orders a withdrawal to the west and south edges along the trails and roads, again automatically accepted, and he'll get a victory point for each unit that leaves via the Brock Road, which again I believe is the Plank Road on here. Maybe it's, I don't know. Anyway, that's that. Let's look also at the Union orders and kind of structure here. So up here you have the 236, which I believe I haven't even written down. I think that's got orders to stick around there for a turn and then rejoin its command. So I don't really feel like I need orders for that. Up here we have most of the 6th Corps, who is not under orders. That's interesting. Okay. Down here I've got the core of the heart of the 5th Corps, which is attacking Ewell along the Orange Turnpike. But then there's specific divisional orders for the 4-5 to attack to the left of the 1-5. Man, do you really need this? And that looks like it's attack through the wilderness in that case, which is just going to create a hellish problem. So I don't know how well that's going to work. I suppose that's why it's there, is to make the Union orders, the Union command not just focus on the road and push hard there, but actually try to punch through that wilderness on one side or the other. The artillery reserve is here, and you have 5th and 6th Corps gathered here. Now that's using the Army of the Potomac Reserve, which is an optional rule, but it's written right into their initial orders. And in fact, their initial setup doesn't make sense unless you use that rule. So it's kind of strange not to. You have the Grant and Meade and their headquarters here. Army of Potomac supplies way up there, though. And there you have the 2-5 Corps, which does not appear to have any kind of orders written down for it. Whereas I suppose it's detached, but like the 5th Corps as a whole has orders to attack along the Plank Road, right? No, along the Orange Turnpike. So theoretically, these would have to pack up and leave with the orders as they're written, and I don't see any errata or anything that covers that, and I don't believe that's what's intended. Yeah. Okay. So the 2-1... Oh, there is no 2-1. The 2nd Corps has orders to hold Brock Crossing, but they have pending orders to attack down the Plank Road, not the Brock Road, notice here, to connect with Warner, who... Well, I don't know who he is. Warner's the whole 5th Corps, isn't he? Warren, sorry. He's the whole 5th Corps. Whoa, but he doesn't have orders to connect there. Crawford's over here. What the fuck, man? Okay. And let's see. Crawford over here, the 3-5, currently has orders to defend the Chewing Farmstead area, but then he has pending orders to rejoin his corps, which would put him back up here. So somehow these guys have to attack down here to connect with him. Maybe all of this is supposed to attack down the turnpike. I don't know. That's how I read the orders, but boy, does that look ugly. And wow. So, however I end up interpreting the Union orders, Grant's probably going to have to start rewriting them pretty quickly too, just because they don't make a damn bit of sense. I mean, 6th Corps has no orders here, yet strung out as though it's... Okay, that's fine. Maybe the North Carolina Cav has already delayed it significantly. But the 5th Corps orders are just a royal mess. And then we also have orders coming in with the reinforcements. And we do have reinforcements coming in early in the game. That's going to be some 2nd and some 9th. I'll hit them as they come in. Hopefully I'll write better orders for the Confederates, because I think the Union orders that I have are going to make a muddled mess of everything. Without a guide to what the historical orders really were, other than maybe looking at the playout, I decided, I go off the rails immediately as soon as I start playing. So if you give me freedom, I'll take it. And oh boy, do I take it here. So for the Confederates, 2-3 over here under Heath, as I'm told to pronounce it. He's got orders to prevent the Union from getting into Taft Field. Once he gets some artillery support, he's going to fall back and try to create a kill zone there to keep the Union from advancing towards our supply zone, whatever. The main of the 3rd Corps has orders to run up Fort Chewing through Jones, Hagerson, and then try to link up with the 2nd Corps, essentially to destroy this. This is the rules, the orders I've put through, to connect with right flank of 2nd Corps, clear the Orange Turnpike, and then advance to the Wilderness Tavern. Go big or go home, eh? I'm looking to destroy the Union Army. Probably can't, but I'm into doing a bold stroke. And then the 2nd Corps has orders to try to hold this area until they make a connection with the 3rd Corps, at which point they'll give support to that 3rd Corps attack. I like phrasing orders as support and attack, because that allows me I can't be the spearhead of it, but allows me to kind of coordinate my troops a little better. Now that's something that I've gotten, some sort of pushback from certain players. Hey, you can't write just support an attack, and that means that, like, if one fails, the other one's not really going forward. Well, I don't know. It seems to me that kind of order was written and used. The problem that I have with it is how accurately does it reflect what happens afterwards. So certainly that kind of order was given, but what's not necessarily clear is support might mean that you stop along with the other unit, or it might mean that you continue attacking. And usually the person who was, see, now this is written as Plank Road as well. I bet you this is in error. The problem is that the commanding officer who gave the orders probably gave a support order, and the difficulty is how the guy receiving it interprets it. And, without adding a whole bunch of special rules, if you're going to allow the player to more or less write their own orders and follow them, by intent, support means support, right? If I wanted my commander to just march forward on his own command, I would write it that way. I would write, a triggering action. Triggering actions is another problem, though. I've run into issues where, hey, when Third Corps moves forward, advance in this direction. Well, the problem with that is how it interacts with foot dragging. If I don't know when Third Corps is going to make its move, I can't guarantee that I have that, 1 hour delay on foot dragging or whatever. Now, I could ensure it by not allowing them to even check for orders until that's been made, until the move's been made. And that would pretty much destroy the coordination aspect. And of course, I don't allow any kind of coordination unless they're within close enough contact that they actually are, like, sending messengers to each other, or within visual confirmation that the action's going on. But yeah, there's some definite leeway there in terms of the orders writing in all the series that maybe I take a little too much advantage of. I'm not sure. But in this case, I feel like this order doesn't even make sense unless I can coordinate these two units through some means. And, well, when I looked at Line of Battle and played that, and there were restrictions against, even writing orders like, hey, afternoon, if you would mind doing this, and time-based orders and such, I was somewhat stunned by the prohibition on those. Now, that doesn't apply to CWB, and I'm going to write time-based orders without a problem. I didn't do it in Line of Battle, and it didn't really hurt me too much. Usually you want things to do things when you see them. It's really... So the time when you want these kind of big coordinated things are when units are usually not doing anything, and you're in preparation for the battle. So right at the beginning of the battle, you want to write orders like this probably. Sometimes a little bit later on. And then also at the beginning of a new day, you want orders like that. And this is actually where I got in trouble with one buddy because, well, we were playing Austerlitz, and I was basically able to coordinate the entire Allied army by giving everything trigger orders off other things. And so they all got to roll their acceptance approximately at the same time. I made a personal restriction on that. I wasn't going to allow them to roll their acceptance rolls until the delay order of the triggering order. Anything else would be silly. But beyond that, it allowed me to get a couple of rolls early in the day, and as soon as one unit moved, everything else had been rolling triggering orders. Now, if it had gone in a different order, it could have ended up a very ragtag and piecemeal attack. But as it was, he just was like, I can't believe that you managed to get everything moving at once. And then I explained how, And he kind of looked at me like, I'm not sure about that. I feel like, and I feel the same way. I feel like that's kind of trying to defeat some of the intention of some of the rules, but on the other hand, you know, that's what good planning is about, is to coordinate the units by whatever means you have. So I really don't know, and it would have been quite possible. I did point out to him that it was no assured thing that I was getting a coordinated attack. Anyway, here it is a assured thing, right? Well, assuming these guys actually make it up, which they may not. I'm still not sure what's up with this shit. Maybe that's the reserve as well. We're underway and actually playing, and I'm kind of regretting not sending these guys forward to attack. This looks kind of weak here, Hancock's force, but and that, you know, that's more the historical. But the thing is, I don't want some kind of stab coming down this way. That could really throw things out of whack as far as I'm concerned. So I'm taking kind of an ahistorical attack up this way and throw them back to defend. I may end up throwing some orders over to that division. It's actually just one division going up here, so that may not be so great. But here's what I'm using. I'm using my knowledge of the pre-written Union orders, which are fixed in the game, to allow me to take advantage of those. Now, this is Lee being a bit clairvoyant or something, I don't know. But it seems like a kind of weird situation. I generally favor seeing all historical orders written down for the beginning of the game, and then, as most of these games had, the option of, hey, start with what orders you want. It seems like taking advantage of the Union orders as written is kind of going a little bit into the unfair territory. On the other hand, I think the Union must have its written orders, so I understand the desire to do what they did to prevent scripting, but you know, they could have made that an option and left in the historical orders for the Confederates. Anyway, as you can see, I'm using the extended lines here, extended road movement rules, which I always use, and we'll see what else is coming about. One thing I love the counters for the old games, but there's a couple of problems with them. One is no little blue marker on the other side, and the other is these A-B markers and A's and B's. They've switched to only giving you BC markers because that's how the majority of people play. It's how I play, which is I just mark a unit if it's under an A firepower, because the tables support A firepower very nicely. So I'm probably going to be using these markers for C size units, which, you know, is clearly somewhat more confusing. I guess the original intent was mark everything except C-size units, but that's a pain in the ass, and almost everything's A size. You need a lot of B markers when you use the road movement thing. I don't think anybody's in a position where they should have been entrenching. These guys may have been. Let me look them up. Okay, so complexity here with the intermingling of Series 3.0 rules and Bloody Road South. It's not terrible, but 3.0 always feels a little more difficult to cope with the command and control than it did over in the 2.0 rules. Basically, the biggest thing is you can't just fire off in-person verbal orders all the time, but the Grant-Meade relationship kind of requires that, right? Grant just does something. I don't know, I think he can do anything to transmit the orders and they fire through Meade, but I just did an in-person verbal because it's cheap. But I'm only allowed one of those per turn, so I sent him orders, and now I've already moved Meade. That shouldn't happen until the movement turn, but the reason for that is because I want to be able to guesstimate when Meade actually gets to write his follow-through orders. Remember, he takes his orders that he relays as gospel, basically. So he's got orders for the 6th Corps to launch the attack down Culpeper Mine Road, which it looks like they already were in the process of doing, but don't have any orders for. And then that actually got much more complicated where it actually gets them down to Parker's store eventually. I like writing big orders. That way I don't have to work too hard, at least on attack. Defensive orders, I find I have to write lots and lots of defensive orders to shift troops around and everything. It's a lot more complicated. But offensive orders, as long as the situation stays more or less as I envisioned it, it should work fine, right? Okay, so like I said, I jumped the gun with that, but now I have two D2s to resolve, which on a 1 they convert over. Neither one does. So that's pretty much my orders now. I'm going to be bringing new units in, which I also have to cope with, and write the orders that those units are traveling under from the reinforcements section, which hopefully there is one more than just what I have seen so far. What I've seen, as always, a nice historical notes and design notes on the game. This is not by Dean, this particular scenario. This is the system designer. Yeah, I'm not seeing the reinforcements being spelled out. Usually they're in a table. Very helpful. Alright, well, I'll hunt down whether they come in with any orders. I just missed that. 6th Corps has orders to march down Culpeper. I'll get rid of all this crap. In support of 5th Corps. That's what they say. I just missed the initial orders there. Reinforcements, do I have any? 1 p.m. Yeah, orders move to join Corps headquarters. I don't have to worry about that. Move to vicinity of A2831. I don't need to write that crap down and await further orders. But I do have to think, gee, do I have some other orders I want to write? And what's up with 5th Corps here? Like, the Corps has orders to be marching this way, yet the Corps headquarters is here. You know, I think I'm allowed to pull these guys. I think I must pull these guys back, actually, which might be worth changing. The only way this positioning makes any sense is if the 2-5 is a part of this Army Reserve thing. I mean, it still doesn't really make sense because 5th Corps is right here. Not sure if I want to commit that reserve. I can detach it or reattach it. Presumably that requires orders. I'm always iffy on the detachment and reattachment requiring orders. Basically, detaching obviously requires orders, but reattachment I usually just kind of allow. So I guess I can release this back to there if I decide I need it. Anyway, we don't have anybody moving here. I've got to worry about this damn cav that I'm going to be advancing on. How does that thing work again? It has its own Union units have to stop. Remember, I don't really want to go around it because I get disordered. So we'll move. I can move here 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, note that these guys aren't in column, but if you remember from the rules on the Wilderness, I'm allowed to move through the Wilderness at normal costs for the trails. So that would be 3, I think I was here, 3, 6 if I do that. If I go into column, it's 1, or if I started in column, it's 3, 4, 5, 6 to there. But then I have this whole line stretching back, which I think I want because those cav aren't going to be able to screw with me. Looks like I have 4 hexes though, which means this guy, I'll also put him in column. That explains this spreading out. That's why No one's there. Okay, so when does the cav get punched back? During the Confederate player turns, I'm going to get to push it back. Okay, well, this is after movement. We've got, what, some Second Corps units coming up now. When Second Corps does its withdrawal, those guys have a further place to go to. But right now, they're just going to gather with Hancock over here. And, well, I started streaming these down. You're seeing some effect of walking through the wilderness there, the shaking. We got more over here. I've got to launch the attack and, position near the road. The road's important for movement, but I still do have to fight where I'm not going to be there. I haven't done the fire yet, so these guys might degrade further. It's going to be tough to fight my way through this. And then 9th Corps slipping in down here, a little piece of it. They're just going to camp out there. They've got a long time to wait before Burnside even comes on. They can't do shit until he's on the board at all. It's just sort of a, hey, they were there already, might as well bring them in. Just in case things get stupid up in the north, if the Union, or if the Confederates end up somehow pursuing all the way up there. I'm not sure how. All right, let's take care of the fire. At range 2, firepower is not very powerful. We don't have a lot of units engaging, so we each took a casualty. There was some straggle on the Confederate side, nothing else exciting. All these shaken markers. Okay, so if I was playing with the option, the really nasty option for the Union, these would stay. This one would recover. But these guys would stay because I'm in the woods. But I'm not going to play with that. But you can imagine how bad the rallying option would be if in play. Units that were at all weakened in the woods would just be wrecked. They would never be able to recover. And that would mean that the Confederates could slip through places like this. You know what I forgot? I moved through the hex where I get a check to see if the Confederates found the secret road. Let's see, I needed 2 through 4 to have found it. Let's roll that. The Union did not. Oh yeah, the Union did too. Okay, the Confederates did not. The Union needs a 2. They did not. So neither one sees, hey, that's a road there, man. There's one more thing to do, which is the assessment of what happened. And I think everybody assesses it as even, because basically nothing has happened. And that's hidden in the old rule books, command rules, status change. There should be a status change table. I don't know where it is on this one because it was in, there it is. It was in the on the other game. It was on the back of the rule book. I may pull that one out. The Baron Victory. Okay, let's see what we get here. We have a whole bunch of people to check, and it is even. Status goes down on a big roll. I'm going to keep this open because it's the one thing I need from this rule book. Okay, well, I have a bunch of statuses to check. I think I decided I should be checking them on my own turn, so let me check the Confederate status like I did with the roads, kind of cheating ahead. The actual rules, I think, probably have the status change baked into an end turn thing. I think that, yeah, I found that destabilizes the turn order in a way that I don't like. So I would rather check at the end of the player turn. Okay, so Lee says, oh man, this is horrible. Of course, the Union has no idea that this has happened. And now for the Union, I have to check for, let's do Grant as red, Meade as, Grant is blue, Meade is red, And Burnsides isn't on the map. You can't think about it. And they both stay the same. Now, if the situation was significantly better or worse than it had been previously, we would look at this as a plus or minus turn, and that would affect what the die rolls are. In case you didn't see Baron Victory. So, for example, if I thought this was a minus turn, I would only improve my view on a 1, and I would decrease my view of the battlefield on a 4 through 6. This can have a huge effect. It can cause a battle to turn into a non-battle. I find that really cool, but I can see where people really didn't like it. Because the panic rules are basically you leave for most of the games. All right, I think we are done with turn 1 here, and we're on to the 130 turn. It's taking a while to get back into this, in part because of all the special rules on this scenario. Why I say this is not a good first game to look at. All right, let's send it up. Okay, a discussion came up at the game box requesting sound effects. Now, personally, I don't much do sound effects when I'm playing, but I was disagreeing with the idea of pew 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 coming off of muskets. So, here we go. For normal musket fire, I kind of go. Okay, fine. For artillery fire, it's more of a. Okay, there we have it. There are multiple different ways you can do it. I usually don't much. Sometimes I also do a. And that's a similar sound to actually what I make when I'm playing some train games too. And it's very late at night, and it's there to kind of cancel out the echoing in my head. That's the main reason I would do sound effects. I had a friend who used to always boom. Yeah, he was a fun gamer, but it would annoy the shit out of me. All right, there you go.